What's up, everybody? Welcome to BzG's react video to Hail Caesar from the Coen Brothers.
Yep.
The Coen Brothers, if you don't know, are very famous for movies like The Big Lebowski,
Fargo.
Oh Brother, wherefore art thou? Oh Brother, where art thou?
Oh Brother, was it twere so easy?
We actually just saw the movie. We did the weird Thursday night release where it's not
technically out yet. It comes out tomorrow, but
because they don't do midnight releases anymore. But anyway, Hail Caesar, starring what's his name?
George Clooney, Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin was the one that I'm thinking of. It all centers around Josh Brolin, just to give you some context of what the movie's about.
Yep.
It is sort of a parody on the life in Hollywood in the
50s, I'd say.
In like the 50s and maybe early 60s, somewhere around there. And it all centers around a day in Josh Brolin's character's life where he's sort of a studio executive and he's taking care of all of these actors' problems and whatnot. And you know what? I'm covering my
your wacko hair.
my face a little bit because I got this weird shadow, so I'm just gonna take it off, get all weird and oh god, it hurts.
Oh my god, look at you.
Yeah, I'm all sexy now.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's Josh Brolin's character. I can't really think of the name because we literally just saw it like an hour ago. Mannix is his last name. And it's just like his day in the life of him of helping all of these crazy people out in Hollywood, basically. And he works for Capitol.
Which is actually, funny enough, the film company from Barton Fink.
Huh.
Another Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, there you go. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is based off of a true story.
Yes. Mannix is definitely real.
Yes.
As is the tabloid writer.
Yes. The rest of it, who knows? It's a Coen Brothers movie, so it's like, what's real and what isn't and all that stuff. But the main story is George Clooney's character, who is in a production of Hail Caesar, which is like this new retelling of the Christ.
It's one of those, like, there were a lot of movies like that in that era of cinema.
Yeah.
Of, like, Ten Commandments, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Like the whole John Wayne, truly, that man is the Son of God.
Exactly. And so they're making this movie, and George Clooney's character gets kidnapped by we don't know who at first, and who's he gets kidnapped at first. It seems like by these two sort of extras, and one of them is from Seinfeld, Newman from Seinfeld.
Oh, nice.
And it was just like, there are a lot of really great cameos where you don't expect these like actors to be in it, and you're like, holy shit, like, but then you remember, like, it's a Coen Brothers movie, and it seems like
they're like popular, they're good filmmakers. They always get all of these actors to be part of it. It's like how with Quentin Tarantino movies,
that's what I was thinking as well.
You always find like someone's there who you don't expect to be in it just because the Quentin Tarantino movies are so big. Yeah. Coen Brothers movies are the same way.
Yeah, a lot of, like, everybody wants to work with the Coen Brothers at one point. Because they're very unique.
Scorsese.
Exactly, because they're very unique, and they're a household name to an extent. At least when you know film and whatnot.
Some of their movies definitely are like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Yeah, exactly. That's a classic. In my book, at least.
No Country for Old Men.
That I don't know if I really enjoyed that one, but anyway.
George, much like a movie you'd enjoy.
Yeah. So George Clooney's character gets kidnapped, what seems to be by extras, but then it turns out he's kidnapped by communists. And it deals with like this whole ransom, and the Communist Party is actually built up of all the writers, all of these old washed up writers from Hollywood, and them trying to get back at Hollywood. It was just funny to me. I was like, wow, if there were communists in like Hollywood, it would be the fucking writers who never like got any dime back then in Hollywood. And it's
now.
Yeah, you're right about that. Very interesting, and that's just like the general. I don't want to like spoil it too much for you. This is a sort of spoiler warning. We might get into some things if you want to go into it.
Mild spoilers. We won't spoil like any super plot-heavy things.
But it's also a Coen Brothers movie, so what can we really ruin?
And also, it's a comedy.
Exactly.
So the thing is, with a comedy, you have to be careful because you never want to spoil the really good jokes.
Exactly.
So we might mention some of them, but should we just say what we thought of the movie right now?
Yeah. What was your impression?
I really liked it.
Okay.
I thought it was really funny, really tightly directed. Like, Coen Brothers movies are always good. They're like, whenever you go see a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, you know it's going to be good.
Yeah. I had that same feeling of, I think the last Coen Brothers movie I've seen, actually, like, in theaters, like, really excited to see it, was actually Burn After Reading. And that one was a similar experience, but quite different, because I remember leaving Burn After Reading, and you always have to take the Coen Brothers work with a grain of salt, because a lot of it, like, my girlfriend Alyssa joined us for Hail Caesar. She was like, what was the real point of the movie? And you always have to sort of, if you're new to a Coen Brothers movie, you always have to take that with a grain of salt of, is there really a point? But does there have to be? And that's the thing, when leaving Burn After Reading, I was really feeling that. I was like, what? Like,
I remember when I first saw Big Lebowski, I was like less than 10 years old. And so...
an appropriate age to see that
exactly. So I was utterly confused about anything that was going on.
Yeah.
And then I saw it again recently, and I still had no idea what was going on.
I saw Big Lebowski around the same age as you did, and I was sort of in the same boat where, like, I sort of grasped what was going on. I was still confused about a lot of it, but I still really enjoyed it. And with this one, it's more of, like, I get what the plot was and all of this stuff, but there were some other things. There was one main side story that was going on that I really didn't understand what the point of it was. I'm just gonna say now, it was if you know, Scarlett Johansson is in the movie, and
she plays this old Hollywood actress.
Yeah, who's being taken care of. Yeah, she's like not married, and she's about to have a child, and in that time, that's not that acceptable. So the studio is trying to take care of her and trying to make it so that the press won't, like, devour her, basically. And that was another interesting thing, just a sidebar, if you will.
We have a lot of those.
I really liked the way they showcased how Hollywood worked back then. I don't know if a lot of it was true, but they made it seem like that's how a lot of, like, Hollywood executives worked back then, of, like, taking care of these people. And I feel like that may still happen now, but I feel like when you think about all of these actors' lives being basically controlled by studios, when you think about that, you really think like 50s, 60s sort of movies. And so the way they showcased that and all of the workings inside Hollywood was definitely, I really, really enjoyed it. But anyway, going back to
Scarlett
Johansson's story, everything else seemed to come together in some sort of way, but that was the one part, and I won't go too into it, where
she was in 2 scenes.
She was in like 2 scenes, and it really seemed like they just had her in a movie just to have her, because she is a big name right now.
To be fair, that's kind of how I feel about Scarlett Johansson in a lot of movies. Because to me, it's like she's never been a good actress, really. She worked in Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
But then, like, her in, like, the Marvel movies, she's always, like, kind of a flat note.
Yeah, but I don't think that's much on her than just the treatment towards Black Widow, but that's for another conversation, I should say. But anyway, like, her story seemed to be pushed aside, and it didn't seem to be relevant whatsoever, but the first scene she's in is actually really interesting. There's a lot of scenes where it's basically just showing you, like, what Hollywood productions were like back then.
Yeah, and I really like that about the movie, because it was like, I love that era of Hollywood because there's nothing quite like it.
Exactly, where it's just like, they're making excuses to put on performances and dances and all of these great grand like settings and whatnot.
It was like, hey, we're just out of war, let's all be happy.
Exactly. So
meanwhile, like, every movie since is like right in the middle of when we're in a war, because we're never not in war anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a topic for another day.
Exactly. So, but the first scene she's in, and like the set piece that they have, and like the performance, and was fun. And there's a lot of that, and we'll get to the second big one later. But yeah, Scarlett Johansson's story sort of felt just very not thought out. Even at the end where they just talk about her at the end, it just felt like this sort of one note, sort of, we don't really care about this. So if you didn't care about that sort of side story, why did you even bother putting it into the movie? But again, it's a Coen Brothers movie, so...
Also, the movie's only an hour and 40 minutes, so they probably needed to use it to bump up a little bit.
Exactly. It'll be interesting if they do an extended cut and see...
That'd be very interesting.
To see what else they had in the movie, of what else they could have used instead of that. But anyway, that was like the one bad note I have for this movie. The rest of it is like fucking... It's
hilarious.
Great. If you're a Coen Brothers fan, you will love this movie. And to be honest, I actually don't want to say that yet. I was about to say something, but I want to wait to the end when we have to score it to say what I was about to say. But anyway, you have like a bunch of other great set pieces, like you see George Clooney doing his role in Hail Caesar, which was...
George Clooney's great in this movie because he's just like, he's perfect in that...
You always forget that he is such a great comedy actor.
Because they always put him in serious movies.
Exactly, and like we were watching yesterday, my girlfriend and I, Alyssa, we were watching, it was like an ER sort of reunion, and on Jimmy Kimmel, and it was like a reunion, but it was only... George Clooney was the only actor they could get, so it's just him, and he's like, but we also have Hugh Laurie, Dr. House, and he's like, when were you on ER? I was like, I wasn't, but I was on House, and so it's like this whole scene between them, and like when I watched that, I was like, man, I always forget how funny George Clooney is.
It also helps that he's super likable.
Yeah, it does help. So
both of those were like perfect for his character here, as like that kind of 50s actor.
Exactly.
Of just like, you're charming, but you're also kind of really naive in like this kind of filmmaking world. Mm-hmm. I thought he was super enjoyable in this movie, both like in all the parts of the movie he's in. Yeah.
And like I just want to focus on like the big set pieces that they had, like all the productions that they were working on. So like that
the production scenes are always the best.
Yeah. And then we get to Channing Tatum's set piece scene, and that actually goes into the plot a little bit of George Clooney's character was kidnapped by these communists, and the message that they send Josh Brolin is like, hey, we want $100,000 for this actor and all this stuff, and he's Josh Brolin's character is told to leave the $100,000 behind like a voltage thing in the set of where Channing Tatum's production is going on, and they're doing like this sort of sailor piece about like how they're gonna like ship off for like 8 months.
Dames. No dames.
They're singing this song called No Dames, and like that the entire beautiful. It's so good, and that's just like that when I was watching that, I was like, man, that really shows off like the epitome of like what 50s productions were, of just like these really fun tap dancing sort of scenes, and Channing Tatum fucking works it, man. Yeah, he really does.
He always does.
And that's another thing. It was like, we once lived in a time where we made fun of Channing Tatum. Remember that?
Yeah. That like when 21 Jump Street came out.
Yeah.
And we were like, why are you making a movie with Jonah Hill?
Yeah, exactly. And then like a little bit, like a couple weeks after that, we were like, oh wait, 21 Jump Street is actually like good. And then 22 Jump Street came out, and then,
that was amazing.
And that was really good as well. And
did we see 22 Jump Street together?
We did not. I remember actually seeing that for the first time in Hawaii with Alyssa.
So did we see 21 Jump Street?
I don't think I knew you.
No, but we saw one of them during Warped Tour. Before the Warped Tour, when we were traveling down there.
Oh, it must have been 22. So
yeah.
I probably saw it again. That makes sense. Sorry.
Because I remember
sidebar.
I remember that because that was when I was just starting on my script.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the set piece with Channing Tatum was just fucking awesome. Just like being at a bar and dancing and having the bar owner be mad, and like them on the tables, and he's like, all the synchronization and the dancing is something I really appreciate, and that's weirdly another thing that like I don't think about enough, because I'm not like a musical sort of dance number type of guy, but whenever I watch dance numbers like that, I'm always highly amused by them, and the synchronization and the blocking of everything, and that scene definitely made me think about that. I was like, oh wow, this is really greatly choreographed. And then the other production that is being worked on is Ralph Fiennes. His character Lawrence. Whatever movie he was directing.
That scene was beautiful.
Hilarious. So let's set up the scene for you. Is at the beginning of the movie, Josh Brolin, he walks into his office and he gets a call from his boss, and they're trying to figure out all of this stuff, all these problems, like, oh, we gotta fix something for Hail Caesar, and oh, you gotta talk to Scarlett Johansson, and oh, like for this movie that Lawrence is directing, the main actor is like, he's not gonna be able to do it because he's sick or something, so we need to find someone else. So Josh Brolin's like, oh, how about this guy? And his boss is like, no. And it's like, oh, how about this guy? No. And then the boss says, how about, I forget the character's name.
It was Harvey something.
Harvey something. We'll just call him, sorry? Harvey Hobie? Hobie is his first name. Hobie something. And
this cowboy actor.
Yeah, who's like this Western actor. And if you're familiar with film, like Western actors have like they're not like the greatest actors, but there's
a special charisma about them.
There's a charisma about them, and they're good at what they do.
You would never have John Wayne being like this main character in like this period piece or something.
Yeah, so Lawrence is directing like this period piece with all these like sort of English actors and all this stuff, and so the
very proper, like, we worked in England for Shakespeare for months.
So
please pardon my terrible British accent.
So Josh Brolin's boss is like, yes, have this Western actor fill in for this for the leading role, basically. And so they take the Western actor to the studio, and it's just like a 10-minute long scene of them trying to film just like this one like short scene of like him walking in and talking to this woman, and Ralphie Fiennes, I always forget.
Ralph Fiennes?
Ralph Fiennes, another like great cameo. Like, he's not like a huge part of it, but when he's in it, he works and he's awesome at it. Just like the exchange that happens with this Western actor and Lawrence is great because he is British as well, and just like the unsynchronization of like where their two like characters
are.
The
cowboy guy again?
I actually don't know who that is. I was trying to place him throughout the whole movie, and then I came to terms at the end of it. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen him in anything. But he was awesome. Of like seeing him like do like the whole ridiculous Western, because when we see him for the first time, he's shooting a Western movie. He's doing all these ridiculous stunts,
like the whole gun twirling, and then jumps on the horse,
jumps from a horse onto a tree, shoots someone else, and then jumps back onto a different horse.
It's like that classic super goofy kind of Western movie that I love. It's like what Lone Ranger was trying to be, but that movie sucked.
Yeah, and so whoever that actor was very charismatic, and in that very like sort of cowboy sort of way, and to see him try to play like this,
he'd be in a movie with a song by Ricky Nelson on it.
And so to see him go from like a Western role to try to fit in like this period piece, like when he's first like doing the first shot, he's like still walking like a cowboy and all this stuff. And,
give me a mirthful chuckle.
Yeah, and like the direction that Ralph Fiennes' character is trying to give him, he's trying to take it, but he's not doing it that well
because he's using words that he doesn't understand.
And it makes me like appreciate like the workings of Hollywood, of like how forced like a lot of things were back then. Of like, hey, let's have like someone who doesn't belong in anything like this. Like, let's just force him into it just because of politics and whatnot. And that was the sort of
like how we kept putting Elvis in movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Elvis movies sucked.
But they had a charm.
Yeah, especially Jailhouse Rock.
And so anyway, the main story, like, so we find out that the communists that kidnapped George Clooney, they're being led by the future, they call themselves. They're being led by Channing Tatum's character, and the Western actor is at like a premiere movie of his. And through like association, there was like a scene before where he sees the suitcase with all the money in it, like the ransom money, and he sees it with Channing Tatum's character, and he decides to follow him because he knows about the whole ransom thing, even though it's being kept like hush hush by like Hollywood people. So he follows him, and he ends up picking up George Clooney because none of the communists are at the house when he picks up George Clooney, and all the communists. I'm sorry if like our telling of this movie is very weird and like all over the place.
Because the movie was weird and all over the place.
The movie was weird and all over the place, but in such a weird Coen Brothers like way.
Like it makes sense when you watch it, but not when you describe it.
Yeah, and so like there's the scene where Channing Tatum is being like rowed on a boat with like his little tiny like lapdog, and it's just this ridiculous scene of him.
Ridiculous.
It's
like it
so
makes
weird.
no sense. It makes sense, but like not in a normal human way.
Not in like an editing like production sort of like where is this leading to? It doesn't lead anywhere. Because it's just like them rowing this boat and Channing Tatum getting on this submarine to go to Russia.
A lot of it feels like kind of that weird YouTube internet humor where it's like half the joke is that there's no joke. It just kind of like it keeps going, and
it's this very long.
You think there's gonna be a punchline, and then there isn't quite. It just ends, and that's what makes it funny.
Exactly, and the whole movie does that very well. And I wanted to take this moment to go to like Josh Brolin's character for a second, of his like dealing with like religion and all of this stuff.
That scene was beautiful.
Well, I don't want to talk about that scene just yet, but like at the beginning where he's talking to
the priest,
and
he's like, "Forgive me, Father, I have sinned."
Yeah, he's basically the movie made a point of saying that his character confesses his sins like every day, and the priest always makes a point
You're really not that bad.
You're really not a bad person. I don't know why you keep confessing sins to me.
I bummed a smoke. Whoa.
And like seeing that, like the movie starts with like him confessing to the priest, and it also ends with him confessing to the priest, and how
bookends are always nice.
And how like the priest sort of gives him this career advice, because Josh Brolin is considering taking a job for an airline company instead of working in Hollywood, and I liked that sort of. It wasn't like a main point of the movie, but I sort of liked that story that was going on in his head of like, do I stick around with like all of these crazy people that I basically just, I'm basically just a daycare service for these people, or do I go to this actual professional like adult job and work for 10 more years and then get to retire, or do I want to like keep doing this? And I sort of liked that story because like I think we've all sort of gone through that in a way of like, do I want to sort of take the safe route, or do I want to do this crazy shit that I've been doing? And that's something I've definitely thought about, like when doing this YouTube shit. It's like,
yeah.
Do I look for an actual career, or do I keep doing this crazy weird thing I'm doing on the internet that no one understands, but they just nod their head in agreement when I try to explain to them what we do.
Okay, yeah.
So I really appreciated that, and like how like his final decision. You don't really know what his final decision is, but it's sort of implied that he decides to stay and deal with the craziness, because even though he never seems to enjoy anything that happens like throughout the movie, but because he stays, you think he's got to enjoy this to an extent. So I really liked that story, that like subtle thing that was going on in that story. So do you have anything else to say about the movie?
I just thought it was like really funny. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Coen Brothers movies are always good. He always gets the best performances out of any of his actors.
Yeah, yeah, both like if you and this is something like I felt after Burn After Reading was like, I don't know if I liked like the script or like where like the story was going, but I loved the performances. And if you don't entirely like, if you're not entirely sure of like what the story was for Hail Caesar and all that stuff, you gotta admit that the performances were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's just like a great unique kind of comedy there. That I feel like is lost when you have all of these comedies come out like every other weekend of just like basic like rom-coms.
Kevin Hart's on a car.
Kevin Hart needs to be taught how to be a cop and all this stuff, or Kevin Hart's teaching Will Smith or Will Ferrell how to be
hard,
be in
how
jail.
To get hard.
So yeah, just like the comedy that the type of comedy that the Coen Brothers does is very unique and stands out, and that's why people like you and myself love it too.
Like it's, as I said on our sitcom, episode, it's very unknowing comedy with the characters.
Exactly.
Like, the characters are never trying to be funny, they're just funny in the way that they are.
So we used to have a show called Quick Reviews where we would give it crazy scores and whatnot. I'm not going to do that today. What I actually want to ask you, how you felt about the film, and if you had to give it a score out of 10, what would you give it? Just give like your sort of like your Rotten Tomatoes synopsis of like what you felt about the film.
I thought it was super funny, like super smart about itself. I love 50s kind of theater. It actually reminded me a lot of when I went to Hollywood with a friend Quentin.
Yeah.
And I stopped by one of those super old scale, like big production theaters.
Yeah.
And it was the one themed on ancient Egypt.
Okay.
This movie reminded me a lot of that.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that. I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of 10? All right. Fair. I really like the parody that goes on in this movie of Hollywood, of 50s Hollywood and productions and all that stuff. And the comedy of the Coen Brothers is definitely, I think, at its peak. Well, I don't know if it's at its peak, but I think this, if you've never seen a Coen Brothers movie before, I think this would be like one of the best movies to watch first to understand the comedy. And I honestly think this is my favorite Coen Brothers movie since The Big Lebowski.
Wow.
And I will give it a 9 out of 10. So yeah, there you go. There are our thoughts there. That was our reaction to Hail Caesar, which is out today, the day that you were watching this. But if you're watching this at a later date, within the couple weeks that this video is out, go see it. It's probably still in theaters. If you're watching this like a year later, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? If they're watching this a year later, they're probably those people who's like, should I watch this on Netflix or should I not watch it on Netflix? So anyway, I think we both highly recommend Hail Caesar. It's a very good like beginning of the year sort of movie to get you into the mindset of like, oh, like what are all these fantastic movies that are going to come out? I think this is a very good like first movie of 2016 sort of feel to it.
You already know like half the people who might be watching this are going to have Deadpool as their first movie of the year. Yeah,
but we're going to, we're going to shout out to Hail Caesar. Try to see that before you see Deadpool, because I think it's an exceptional film. And yeah, so there you go. Thank you so much for watching our reaction to and review to Hail Caesar. What are your thoughts on the movie? You can leave them in the comments below. You can, if you want to reach out to us and have a discussion about Hail Caesar, you can always find us on Twitter. That is all below us right here. My hand motion game is on point today. So there you go. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time.
What do you want?
Sorry, my cat. If you watch my Let's Plays, you know that my cat likes to meow a lot whenever I do recordings at home. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, and until the next BzG Reacts video, have a great day full of great Coen Brothers movies, much like Hail Caesar. Thank you.
Art Garfunkel is what your hair looks like.